Hey, coaches, before we get going today, I just wanted to thank you for all you've been doing to support this podcast. And we have an incredible lineup coming up here. We have just about every major college conference represented. We have a ton of FBS coaches, Division II coaches, Division III coaches, some great high school football coaches coming on the podcast to share with you and help you grow professionally during this time. I really appreciate all of you asking your questions on Twitter. Please follow me at Coach K. Grabowski for our daily updates on our guests and your opportunity to ask questions. We will read them on the show and attribute those to you. So please contribute to the show as much as you can. Welcome to the Coach and Coordinator podcast. I'm joined today by the offensive coordinator at the University of Akron, Tommy Zagorski. He spent 2 seasons at Eastern Kentucky and Tennessee before that, and he was also at John Carroll, where I got to know him, and joined Coach Arth, who went from John Carroll to the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, where those guys did a great job turning a program around. Now they're at Akron in year 2, and I'm just excited to have Coach Zagorski back here. So, Tommy, welcome back to the podcast.
Keith, it's great to be here. I'm ready to click my card for another one. I heard my third visit, I get a free sandwich, so I'm pretty excited about this.
Yeah, we'll punch you on the way out here. We'll coach the transition. You know, I got to come to campus a year ago. Disappointed that won't be able to do that this year, but, you know, watched just the energy, a lot of excitement around the program. I know year one's difficult. We talk about, you know, that kind of stuff on the podcast all the time with guys, and everybody says, you know, that process is basically a 3-year process, and typically that's what you see when you're taking over a program and it's brand new. You guys have been through this before, so you kind of know what it's like. You know, what's the expectations now moving into year 2?
You know, realistically, it's a team that's going to embrace our culture. And I think year one, you know, we started from the bare minimum. We explained, you know, I think the opening meeting when we met with our guys, Coach Arth walked in and he said, "This is a football." And held it up and explained what a football was. And I think that's important, that sometimes, you know, I know I've been part of this, you know, 3 times now, from John Carroll, Eastern Kentucky as a new staff, and trying to flip it down there in Richmond, and then now here in Akron. And, you know, doing that, I think sometimes you walk in and you assume that these guys know this or they know that, and you can't make those assumptions. And when you don't make those assumptions, I think it's important that you teach the guys the basics every single day. And it makes you a better football coach in turn, because, you know, there's certain things where you're getting a guy into a stance that you're making sure that stance is exactly the way you want it. And I know that sounds elementary, but, you know, a lot of guys, you come into a program and you look at the way the guys are, you know, in a stance, the way that they do certain things, the way they proceed. You know, you really have to teach these guys everything, from the way they go to class, where they sit. I mean, for our rule of thumb, our players are not allowed to have a hat or hood on in a class. They have to sit in the first 2 rows of the classroom. We do these checks. If they're not in the first 2 rows, it doesn't count. So, you know, it's one of those things where going to do that and being engaged in it. And the biggest thing that, you know, I think that we're really happy about, that we celebrate a lot, is the academic turnaround and what we've done as a university with our young men. You know, we had the 2 highest GPAs on record with the football program, the 2 semesters we've been with these guys. So you look at last spring, and then obviously the summer it's usually pretty good. If you have a low GPA in the summer, the Lord have mercy on your program. And then you come back and you have that fall where we kind of bounced back and academically and did a really nice job. Then the service component of it. You know, last week we were able to post, you know, before our guys left for the Corona hiatus, I thought it was really important to look at. We had 70 of our players involved in over 500 hours of community service, which I think is phenomenal. And that's a testament to who they are and really embracing servitude. And that's where leaderships are developed. And I think everybody that's listening to this knows that already. But until you put it into practice, until your players are doing it every single day, it makes it, you know, vastly different. And then the football's got to come with it. And that's where we, unfortunately, missing this spring football period as of right now. It's kind of unnerving when you have a lot of effort and time put into it. They prepare their bodies and their minds to be able to attack this. And you as a coach spend your days recruiting and then also planning out this spring and looking at how can I maximize our group periods? How can I maximize our indie crossovers? How can I maximize all these different opportunities while now you don't get to? And it's kind of that unknown. So I think it's a little different for the guys, but you know, everyone's going through it. It's not just us, and we got to be smart. We got to be strong every single day.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, you know, looking at it now, we don't know what the future holds here as far as how this might get started back up or when this might end. So this is the time you get to develop professionally here too. What's been your approach? How are you taking a look at things you want to learn and how you're going to do that?
Well, we have an outstanding staff, back at the university. And one of the things that I think that we've done a nice job of, our video department, they get everything. I mean, I get to watch anybody, anytime, whenever I want to. So what I've been doing is I've actually been going through and I'm breaking down different NFL teams, watching what they're doing right now throughout the year. So, I go through literally their 17 games or 16 games rather, try to piece together who they are, what's their identity, what's the common trends, what are they good at, what things don't work, what's the kind of trend in that league, and kind of going from there. So I've been able to do that. I kind of lock myself away up in my office in my home, and my wife's a nurse, so she's out there. Nothing changes for her, so she's working at night, and she's doing everything else. So it's kind of been me at home, being able to do this. And then I think realistically that's a good time to study those guys, and really not just from just an X's and O's standpoint, but just technique-wise as well. I mean, there's so many things you see that translate over are your individual drills. The individuals you do with your players every day, do you see that reflected in not only the way your guys play, but also other people play? Are they doing the same stuff you're doing at a high level? And I think that's important to look at. So that's been really, really good for me. I've been trying to make sure that during this time period also, I'm watching some of the more successful college programs as well to see what they do, because obviously the game's different at the two different levels, but, at the end of the day, it's still 11 guys on the field, and both teams are going to try to stop people, and we're going to try to get the ball downfield and try to attack people.
Yeah, I was just talking to Coach Ron Roberts from Baylor, and we had a little bit of that exact conversation, how, he talks to guys from other conferences to find out, what's going on, because I think you find this true, even thinking back to our OAC days, like when somebody starts having success with something in the conference, it starts popping up, in other places, whatever that might be. I remember pin and pull being something that started to become a big part of it in the OAC. Everybody was doing that and having success with it. And so you need to step outside a little bit and find out, answers to what some people are doing just to stay ahead of the curve. Now, what I found interesting and I told them about was, for me, this past season, I had my assistant at USA Football is now an assistant with the Cleveland Browns defensive staff, and then Charlie Coiner, who was a long-time college NFL coach. We just watched games all weekend, and then what we call it every week we get together, do a little podcast. We call it Trends Day. We did it every Wednesday, and it was like the trends we saw developing. And man, we could not believe how some things started just spreading across the country, and everybody started doing. You might not have seen that team doing it early on, but somehow it creeped into their playbook. So I think, though, having that network, and now is a perfect time to develop this, right? That network of guys who you can go to, who you trust, maybe are facing different situations than you, are away from it a little bit, but can maybe work with you through an answer to some problems you might have just by getting on the phone real quick.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things you look at is that, what we're attacking as a country, and our prayers go out to everybody that's being affected by this, but we're also in a time period where technology's never been greater. And this is an opportunity for us to, unfortunately, our students sometimes isolate themselves from each other, even when they're next to each other, by being locked into these devices that we're talking on right now. But one of the beauties of that, one of the powerful things about it, is that we have a chance now as coaches to use that to stay in contact with recruits, to be able to talk to, their families, to be able to talk to other coaches, like you said, at other programs, other levels, not just, our level, but also this morning I talked to two different high school coaches in Northeast Ohio, just talking to them about, how are things going? How's your team? How's this, how's that, just to check in, because, there's a lot of great ideas out there. I'm watching, even on Twitter right now, all these coaches are posting all the workouts they're doing with these guys that are just stuff they can do at home by themselves. And it's really powerful. It's good to see people pulling together in that direction. And, it's good to see that. And, I think that we all learn from different people, and, it doesn't have to have an NFL logo next to it to be positive. So like you said, reaching out to those guys and utilizing this technology to really maximize this time and make sure when we get finally the ball rolling, literally and figuratively, we're going. And we're the best version of us that we can be.
Yeah, I think the part about this that says a lot just about our profession, about the coaching community is, while there are those people who try to make a buck off of us during the season, everybody's doing a lot of free stuff right now. I know me being able to reach out to college coaches right now, they're giving their time. I mean, I think we have just an incredible lineup here. And even on some questions I'm going to ask you here, right? Some of these questions are coming from some of your colleagues at the FBS level. So that, I think, just says a lot about our willingness. Really, I mean, hey, we get to September and yeah, we want to beat each other's butts, but like right now, I think everybody is about sharing and getting better, and I think it's an important thing for this time as well, something we haven't ever faced before in our lives.
Absolutely, and it's a great equalizer too. One of the things you talk about competitive advantage, that different people discuss a lot of different times is you look at, when I was at a place like the University of Tennessee, your budget's through the roof, where in the spring you can go visit another school and you can afford to go do that. Well, certainly other schools, you don't have the flexibility to do that fiscally, but now we can all do this to help each other out. And really that's what the sport's all about. The sport's about giving back to it and giving all of us so much. It's like us grown men are so passionate about a boys game, but I think it's important for that as well. So it's good to see guys like you, Keith, and really across the board, all of us pulling together and maximizing each other's mindset and making sure that this game's even better for our students when we all return to it.
Absolutely. You wonder too, like, will that become the new norm? Because we still like to go out and see people in person, and I don't think clinics will necessarily go away. But now I think guys are, a lot of guys who didn't know what Zoom before know what it is real quick, and just embracing some of the way to do this virtually. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, when you think about it, and I think about, being kind of one of those clinic junkies for a while, you're gone every weekend. And that's okay till you have kids, then it's not quite okay. So I think it's an opportunity that allows us to continue to grow and just find new and different ways to do it.
Absolutely. It's a big, powerful point of it. And I think it's really good. And like you said, Zoom, I'm learning more buzzwords right now about different ways to meet online than I ever thought possible in my entire life. It's absolutely amazing. I actually reached out to a friend that I attended Case Western Reserve University with, and she's worked from home for, I think, the last 7 or 8 years in the profession she's in. She's a headhunter recruiter, and I kind of reached out to her, just kind of some of the things that they do, or she does rather, with her colleagues on a daily basis, to kind of work with it, just to kind of adapt to this and learn a lot more about how people are meeting, how we do this, and kind of going from there.
This first set of questions from Kyle Siegler, who is the tight ends coach at Marshall. And his first question is, how do you organize your practice and scripting, and especially when you're dealing with, being able to handle the 7-on-7 for you as an offensive line coach?
Yeah, I'm really fortunate that, we have a great staff that pulls together. Tom Arth, our head coach, is also really heavily involved in the offense. He was our play caller last year during the season and does a good job of delegating. He's done a nice job letting me kind of delegate where we go as an offense this offseason, and having Brian Gasser as our passing game coordinator is really, really helpful. Brian really takes care of the 7-on-7. And, different periods we do during practice, we kind of script accordingly, and it works together. It's our entire unit. We've got, and what I try to do is I try to give everybody an opportunity to script something at practice, just because I think that's important for every guy on our offensive staff. I hope that all of them aspire to be offensive coordinators at one point or another in their career, or to be head coaches. And I think it's important to be able to take ownership of certain periods and to look at what we're trying to accomplish and trying to attack it. So, for example, our right now our tight ends coach, Chris Cook, he's an O-line guy by trade. And it's always funny when you say, question like a tight ends coach. I've coached tight ends before in my career. We've got other guys that, Brian Gasser coached tight ends before. So we've had different coaches on our staff that have coached tight ends. And when they do that, you look at there's those guys that are more O-line type tight end guys, and then there's guys that are more passing game type tight end guys. And you want to be. And one of the things that was huge for me as a coach developing was when I came to Eastern Kentucky, I was a tight end coach for the first time I didn't coach offensive line in my coaching career, and for that first season. And when I got there, I remember 7-on-7 came the first day, and I didn't go to it. I went down to. And I was doing one-on-ones, and I'm like, wait a second, what am I doing? I got to be out here with my guys. But realistically, we let Chris Cook, our tight end coach, be he scripts our 9-on-7 for us every day. Jaden Everett, our running backs coach, he's in charge of our ball security circuit. So it's a big thing that we do, a big point of emphasis on for us as a program. So it kind of gives him that ownership, but also allows him the opportunity to be in charge of that. And I think realistically, when you have a great staff, you can give guys, delegate, and give different opportunities to those guys that allow them to do that. And I think one of the things that at the University of Akron, and you know this from hanging out with us a little bit, Keith, is that you can check your ego at the door. Titles don't mean anything in our program. I mean, realistically, what it is it's a group of men trying to pull together in the same direction and really complement each other's talent set. So in a long-winded way, each guy has a different point, so that at the end of the day, usually Coach Ark and myself, and we'll have kind of the final say on what's on that script and kind of where we go from there.
Yeah, I was able to sit with you guys during spring ball last year, and I mean, it was a collective scripting period, and even I can remember even some of your GAs kind of getting involved in helping that process, and it moved pretty quickly too. I mean, it was good discussion here and there about what we're going to run, and one of those things like somebody say, "Hey, we ran that same look yesterday. Let's flip it to this." So I think the collaboration part is important. Whether you do that in one room, whether you do it separately. That ownership part of the offense, right? Being a coordinator does not mean you are the guru or the guy who makes all the decisions. Coordinate means to bring together, right? And so how do you utilize all those skills?
No, and that's the biggest thing is that empowering people. If you don't believe in your coaches and you don't give them those opportunities, how do they believe that you believe in them? And I think that's important. And I think what we do offensively is sophisticated enough that all these guys are taking something away from them, even if they stay here or if they go somewhere else. They're going to be a better coach in the long run because of it. And it's also important to understand why we do what we do. I've been in programs where that you have when I run an outside zone at the boundary, well, the safety keeps skirming out in this covered quarters. Well, who's going to go get him? And talking about having that healthy conversation, like why are we working this way? Why are we doing this? How are we attacking this middle of the field closed look? How are we doing just different things that, like you said, you've been part of those conversations, and it really allows us to maximize everybody's talent set. And the biggest thing is you hope guys have film of it. And that's when you really get excited, is when somebody sits up and goes, oh, I have tape of us doing this against this team, or so on and so forth. And that's when you really get excited about it and kind of help you build on the DNA.
Another question from Coach Segler was, how hard is it to be the play caller and not coach the QB?
Yeah, I here at the University of Akron, Coach Art's is our play caller and also our head coach. But when I was the offensive coordinator at Eastern Kentucky University, I coached the tight ends and the offensive tackles. And one of the biggest things was meeting with those quarterbacks on a regular basis. For me, I think one of the things I got to learn working alongside Coach Art for so many years before departed to go to the University of Tennessee and EKU was he looked at the game always through a quarterback's lens. And I think as an offensive lineman, I never really thought of it that way. Even though I did play the position of center at various points in my career, I didn't really look at it that way until I became a coach. And meeting with those quarterbacks, understanding what are they comfortable with. I know as a playing offensive line, you get lined up and you go hit this or go hit that, and you're like, okay, I got this. Well, then it comes back to the quarterback. He's got to know what all 10 guys are doing. The other 10 guys are doing every single play. He's got to have the opportunity, that confidence that when he walks into that huddle, all those guys are going to look at him and know that he's the guy that's going to get it done. And, meeting with those guys and being able to script through it, and when we script our first 8, in Eastern, I did a first 16. I did, our first 8, and I had another first 8 that I would go through. So I guess it would be the first 16 as you would articulate it. But long story short, I had the quarterbacks rank their top calls as well as every coach on our offensive staff, including our GAs and QCs. And what that did for me was, hey, what was like, and if there was something that everybody had, it was like, all right, we're definitely running this. If we had something, you're getting mini coverage and like, all right, we're going to run 3-by-1 all go special. All right, great. Like, all right, everybody runs that against it. Awesome. Well, everyone's got that checked off the box. So where's the quarterback? What's he confident in? What does he really love? Like, what's the things that he went through the week and he heard us call that play and said, ooh, I like when we call that, or I like when we do this, and I like when we do that. So that was really important for me to have those extra meetings with the quarterbacks. And those were obviously voluntary because of the time periods, the times that we give with those guys. But that was huge for me and crucial for me as a play caller to really know what they're comfortable with, because there's certain things that I could absolutely love and adore and say, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But at the end of the day, the guys execute me got to be comfortable with it. And I think that's important. So that was a big part of it, not coaching the quarterbacks. And then also having a good enough relationship with those quarterbacks so they can be honest with you. And I think there's times where, players, especially the quarterback position, they're such leaders, they're such aggressive people by nature. They don't want to let you down. They're people that they know people depend on them. They don't want to let you down, but, having a healthy conversation going, hey, Coach, I really don't like the progression on this. I'm not feeling it. I don't like the way it feels. Just too slow for developing for me. I'm not comfortable with it. Well, then I'm not going to run it because I'm not the one that's got to make the throw. You do. I can call this stuff, but realistically for those guys, making sure that they're comfortable with the play calling, comfortable with where we're going to go and directionally. And then also during the game, having a conversation where if you're calling the game in the box, being able to get that quarterback on the phone and talk to him, and then talk to him before even the quarterback coach talks to him, just to kind of feel him out a little bit, to kind of see where he's at and kind of going from there.
Our next question kind of relates to that idea of being a coordinator who has, grown up as an offensive line coach. It's from Scoop Reed here, and says, what have you done to improve your knowledge of the passing game? And, I think this probably applies, while you continue to grow, this probably applies a little bit more as when you were a younger coach. And I can remember just myself having offensive line coaches on the staff who really knew the offensive line protection and run game really well, but when you get into the nuts and bolts of attacking a coverage, they needed to learn some things there. So I think it's a good question, especially for those offensive line coaches who aspire to be a coordinator.
Yeah, realistically for me, it's, being inquisitive and, when you talk about being a clinic junkie, I go to clinics, I really spend more time going to DB talks and wide receiver talks than I do anything else. And the reason I do that is because based on my body type, if anyone's looking at the picture of me, I never played wide receiver. I never was in DB. I never was even close to being any of those guys.
I would have never guessed.
You never would have guessed, Keith. That's right. So, no. But being able to do that, for me, it's important that, it makes you a better run game coach if you can understand the coverage responsibilities. It makes you a better football coach if you can understand, what that secondary is trying to do, how they're trying to attack you, what are they vulnerable, what are they doing? And for me, it's been developing a network of coaches that I can ask those questions to and not feel ignorant when I ask those questions. Because I think day one, I remember going into coach, I became a graduate assistant at John Carroll. I'm drawing cards on a summer day, and I'm looking at one of these things, and it's like, all right, we'll cover 8. I'm like, what's cover 8? Like, I have no idea, well, that's quarter half. Well, explain, and like the way that it was articulated there in that vernacular. I'm trying to think to myself, well, I'd rather have somebody explain it to me and I understand it than just going, okay, I just draw this card as quickly as I possibly can and get through it. And I think that's one of the things I was watching. I was able to watch the Belichick Saban deal, and I thought it was Coach Belichick and Coach Saban made a good point saying that people rush through their responsibilities in the office sometimes to try to get to the perceived more important things. And I think what happens is you don't develop that core base as a coach. If you don't develop that core base as a coach, you don't really know what's going on. It would be the equivalent of if I told you, like, hey, I want you to memorize multiplication tables, but I never taught you addition. Well, how are you going to get there? Like, I can teach you to recite stuff and sound like you're kind of intelligent at, but what are the basic building blocks to get to that point? And I think that's really, really important. And for me, it was talking to as many people that would listen to me talk that, like I said, I was comfortable with. Because also you do have a little bit of pride where you don't want to go sit there and ask questions where people go, it's really dumb and easy. I mean, it's the same thing where you ask me questions about the offensive line, and I go, yeah, that's great. That's it here. You learn this, you learn that, and you kind of go from there. But, I try to never, insult anyone's intelligence when you do that. And people that were really important to me were, Tom, obviously, coming from the NFL. Coach Arth, working with him right out of the gate when I was a GA at Carroll, and then working with him alongside on the offensive side of the football before he became the head coach. It was really important to see, what he was looking at, why he understood these different things, and then reaching out to people in his network that were able to help me become a better coach. Mark Elder, who was my head coach at the at Eastern Kentucky University. He's been a coordinator on the offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball, and special teams. So he's done a little bit of everything. And really, it was really important for me was I could always ask him the question why, and he would always try to give you the proper answer. If you didn't know the answer, he'd go, well, technically, I think they're trying to do this, and He goes, but we can look into it and kind of go from there. So I think don't be afraid as a coach to ask the question why. I think sometimes you got to know when to ask the question why. Like the question why is not during period 7 and the cards have already been drawn and you're trying to get to the next period. But being able to take coaches, and I think as coaches, we got to take time to develop those young coaches so they understand everything that's going on. Because unfortunately, we as coaches sometimes are like, oh, I got to finish this, and I got to recruit, and I got to do this, and then I got to go pick up dinner so to see my wife. Well, that's all really important things, but also to develop those young men and make sure that they're prepared to go forward and do things. That's I spent more time. I had a GA this year who actually just left to go to a Big 12 school. I'm really excited for him because he's going to do a phenomenal job there, and he's prepared really well. And that's because of, his inquisitiveness of being able to ask that question why, and be comfortable enough to ask me questions. And I think one of the things you look at is sometimes it's a little bit fearful when you work for certain people in this profession. You get scared to ask those questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If somebody thinks you're stupid for asking the question, shame on them. It's important to study that and to look at it and to develop those relationships and develop really that intellectual curiosity when it comes to the throw game, so you understand what's going on. I would be really embarrassed to sit in a meeting and have to do that. And then the last thing was when I interviewed at University of Tennessee, I interviewed with Mike DeBoard, who was the offensive coordinator at the time, and then went on to be the OC at Indiana. Right now, I believe he's an analyst at Michigan. And Coach DeBoard, when I met with Debo, the first question he asked me, I'm interviewing for the assistant O-line job at the University of Tennessee. First question he asked me, what's your favorite 3rd and 8 concept? So I go to this meeting, I go to this interview, and I'm like all geared up. I'm like, all right, here we go. I'm going to talk O-line with this guy, ready to go. Boom, and he right on the spot. Hey, what's your favorite 3rd and 8 call? I'm a 29-year-old, Division III offensive coordinator, and I come back and I hit him right with it. He's like, man, this is great. So we go through this, and he's like, he goes, the reason I asked you a question, he goes, I really didn't care what you were going to say. He goes, I just wanted to see if you do anything other than just the offensive line. And I think that's important to make sure you do that and be prepared for it, which is great. And I felt really good. That's a testament to the coaches. I worked with John Carroll at that point, that I was prepared to be able to have a intelligent conversation with people at that level, especially during the interview process.
Yeah, and I want to point our listeners back to an episode I did recently with Tom McDaniels, and he talked about his approach. It was a talk he gave at Mount Union to some guys in Larry Karras's football class about how to become a head coach. And early on, he said, major in something and minor in something, and then as you get going, become a double major in something. The whole idea that early on you are gonna have that limited skill set. You do need to probably get deep to be successful, get deep into something, get good at it, but still have those other things you're working on to learn the game. And a lot of what he said reminded me of that. So I'll be sure to link that up in our show notes here.
Oh, awesome. That's great. I'm looking forward to listening to it.
Moving on, what run game are you guys using against the 4-eye for some time? Gave me some nightmares, especially when Tom took over at John Carroll and broaden, who the now defensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Rams, Brandon Staley, and he had that defense that you guys were in 4 eyes, and it was something nobody was really doing it before. Man, it was tough. Just definitely had to change how you looked at things a little bit. So, what do you like against the 4-eye?
The biggest thing is when you're recognizing that and you're looking at it, how are those 4 eyes playing? Are those guys 2-gap players? Are they angling and slanting those guys? Like, what are they doing with those guys? And from that standpoint, it kind of opens up how you can attack it accordingly. I think everyone in America will tell you that running outside zone is a great play against it, just because, you're still going to be able to work your combinations. You're still going to be able to work inside zone. You're going to have number problems. And also it's not a natural flow to it. And this is where I have a couple debates with a lot of local coaches that I like to talk ball with on a regular basis. And, one of the things that I saw with these guys is you see, the evolution of inside zone, and everyone's running some variation of it almost, it seems like, when you put on the film. But, the duo play, cultivating as many double teams as you possibly can and being able to get to it out of multiple personnel sets. I think sometimes you get caught when you go, well, we can run out of 11. Run out 13. Well, everyone here doesn't carry 12 and 13 personnel. Everyone doesn't have a 21 personnel where they can just move that fullback and adjust them up on a line of scrimmage and tell them, hey, you're going to go do this. and go from it. And the first time I learned to play, someone explained it to me as power without the puller. And I said, okay, power without the puller. And then I went and I met with an NFL team and for OTAs, and I told them that I was like, yeah, what do you guys run? I go, we run, duo, the power without the puller. And the O-line coaches almost laughed me out of the room. They go, it's called duo. It's not power without the puller. And from that point on, I've always been like, okay, very important with that. So, the biggest thing is, it's just you ID it different. You ID it like a gap scheme run. But then when people watch it, you can work through it. And then the other thing is the ball handling that comes with that duo play. I think the biggest thing you see with it is a lot of teams, if a team's an under center team, are they going to open, make it look like outside zone, the first ball handling and come back and let that court, let that back have time to go read that Mike linebacker and go with it? Or are you going to have the opportunity to run it out of a gun? Are you going to run it out of, are you going to run out of a pistol? Are you going to run it out of the sidecar? What way do you want to run it? And how do you want to do the ball handling? I was watching the Buffalo Bills the other day, and they run the duo play enough. And one of the things that they do, they don't reverse ball handle. They open, similar to what Lenahan was doing down in Dallas when they were running it with Dak Prescott. Because Prescott, when they would run it, he'd still be able to work it, but they were still open there because I think Ezekiel Elliott was able to read it better that way. So it just depends on who you're looking at when you're running it and what you want to do. So those are two really good plays that I always like to run against that. The pin and pull, the aforementioned pin and pull play also is another way of getting to, if you're not a true outside zone team, it's another way to kind of cultivate leverages that aren't nearly natural. And then also any other way you can get to it that way. I think it's important. I know a lot of teams also run the guard tackle pull where they try to read the 4-eye or they try to read the in-man line scrimmage. Because you're well aware, you can't block back on it. And then and the last play is the tackle wrap play. If you're going to run dart, with that, you'd be able to do it. And, I know as coaches, we're always looking at ways to attack that 4-eye and those fours to see, how they're, but the biggest thing is, number one, how are they playing it? Are they playing it where you're actually going to have to play against the 4-eye, or are they playing it where you're going to be playing against an underfront all day? And that's important to me when I look at the way teams do this. And I think also formationally, there's times where you can get them out of it, where you can actually call their hand and put them in a place where they are going to be just in an underfront. And then from there you go, okay, I feel a little bit better. Well, the coach, he started right here on the tackle. He's playing the B gap. He's coming down. And then it's just like you have to look at it that way and see that. So I think that's the first thing as you do it. And I think that's important.
Well, I know there is definitely some of that NFL influence in your offense, having watched you last spring and, with any NFL coach, especially a guy who played quarterback like Coach Arth. Run game is the quarterback's best friend, and the play action is right up there at the top for him as well, because that's the opportunity to really find some guys wide open. How big is the play action game for you guys?
Oh, it's crucial. It's absolutely crucial. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that we meet on, meaning Tom and myself when we cross over, and Brian and everybody when we get together. The biggest thing that we always do is, okay, we've got this play. What play action can we run off of it? How can we set this up and be able to do that? And like you said, the NFL game, you watch it. I mean, it is, the play action galore. I'm watching the other day. Going back watching Green Bay. And, Green Bay had a phenomenal season, but that week one against Chicago, they had no idea who they were yet. Still that identity didn't seem like they had what they wanted to do. And they're taking sacks on first down, and they're doing all these different things that, isn't really germane to a good offense. And they're doing this, and then finally they're able to get the ball rolling a little bit by running the football, setting up a little bit of outside zone, and then setting up play actions and some nakeds off of it, and giving them some shots where it gave them a chance to at least extend the field in a very low-scoring attempt, a low-scoring game. So for us, the play action is important. And then also, it's easy, and this is where you get into it, where you talk about looking from a quarterback side. Well, a quarterback usually can say, well, I can get this, this, and this. But, the great ones are always going to say, well, am I protected? Am I going to have the opportunity to get to this by being protected? And I think that's the biggest debate we have is, when you're setting up your play actions, where are you going to be weak? If you're pulling somebody, can your center slam back on a 3 technique in that pass protection? Because he's really not going to get a ton of help from that tackle, because that tackle's got a 5 technique that's going to go after him, or depending on what the front's going to be. Are you able to have your tight end block somebody one-on-one? Are you able to get a running back involved and be able to allocate him into the protection so that you have enough people to work to it? Are you comfortable enough with the concept you're having that you're investing 7 to 8 people into your protection, but knowing you're only going to end up with either a 2 or 3 man concept Are you comfortable with that as a coaching staff? And I think that's really, really important for us, and that's a lot of the debate that we have. We're trying to put this product together.
I was talking to somebody about the play-action game the other day. The thing I love about a good play-action game with, a tight end in the game especially is those are the guys who, you do it right, and they're good at blocking and being patient and getting out. Looking at, a tight end and a guy who's good at blocking and, dynamic as a pass catcher really gets some big opportunities in an offense, especially, what they're doing with the pro-style offense, heavy run game, because you're not only just attacking a dual responsibility defender, you have a dual responsibility offensive player, weapon, right? I mean, I'm not talking receivers, can stock block, but the guy who's actually blocking in the box and appears to be, sold out on blocking in the box, and now all of a sudden he's out on a route. Looking at those guys, how big is it to be able to have, a dynamic guy there who can also block, and how do you guys like to utilize that guy?
Yeah, that's crucial. I mean, it's crucial for us. I know for me, when I played, it comes back to, and I know high school coaches are listening to this and they're going to laugh that when I'm going to talk about the recruiting process with these guys, I always try to find those basketball players. And this is where, as a high school coach, if there's a guy that's 6'3", 6'4" on the basketball team that's sitting towards the end of that bench, but he's a good athlete, there's a good chance he could probably play tight end for us. Does he have the right mindset? Is he a kid when you go watch him play? Does he move well enough in space? And I think that's important. Tight ends traditionally are a position group that have grown from other position groups. It's a guy that maybe he wasn't fast enough as a wide receiver, so he gets moved to tight end. It was a quarterback that's a big kid, but they're like, you know what? I don't know if he's going to be able to play quarterback for us. We might have to move him to tight end. Offensive lineman that's an undersized offensive lineman. Maybe he can play tight end for us. A defensive lineman that, you have a defensive end that you're like, maybe he's a better D lineman than he is, a better O lineman than D lineman, and so on and so forth, or maybe he can play tight end for us. Realistically, any defensive coordinator will tell you, the more those tight ends are on the field, the more stress you place on them. And the reason that is you can line those guys up in a myriad of ways, from isolating them by themselves one-on-one with a smaller defensive back. You can put them in the backfield and make them go block somebody. If you have somebody who can do both of those things, you have a really, really dynamic offense right there. Because that tight end position, it just gives you so much flexibility. I mean, to be able to have this, in some cases, and we were at Easter, we had a kid that played for us that I think in his career he might have caught 25 passes in the 3 years that he played varsity football for us, Eastern Kentucky, which is not an overwhelming stat. But the thing that's really cool about his stat was that we could run the football behind him. It was almost like we got in unbalanced. The kid was so inept in how he wanted to block people. And he was a kid that was a former AU basketball player that really just didn't get into football until like his senior year of high school. And we were able to, and the kid was 6'6", he was, 255 pounds. And he would get up and he would just go attack these guys and throw hands on them. And he wasn't afraid to do it. And he took a lot of pride in that. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that when you get those tight ends that take pride in being able to block and being able to be physical and being able to have that kind of, battle cry, it makes everybody in the program that much better. That dual play we talked about before with the four eyes. If you got good tight ends, like that play spurts out to those bumps out to the tight end, or those tight ends plural, so many times they can just sustain and stay on their block. They're going to do a really, really nice job and be able to do it. And I think that's where you get that. But also being smart. If you're going to line up, you're playing the Houston Texans, and you know that you're going to get your tight end blocking J.J. Watt all day, you don't feel great about that. Like, nobody's like, oh, man, that's a good matchup for us. I don't care who your tight end is. Now it's, can the guy help you chip and nudge on that J.J. Watt type player and then get him out late? Can he be able to help you combo through him to work whatever you're going to do and kind of go from there? So I think that's important with that tight end position. It truly is the most flexible position in football. I truly believe that. And I think it's one of the most dynamic positions. And when you have players that can do that, it really permeates throughout your entire offense and really allows you to be, a really balanced, effective offense that isn't as easy to know what you're going to do. I look back, you think of John Carroll, in 2014, my last year there, we go into that Final Four, the Elite Eight game with Mount Union. And, we had a lot of the same stuff we carried the first time we played them because we liked the way it was successful. but we window dressed it with 13 personnel. And unfortunately, we lost one of those tight ends to a concussion in practice on Thursday before the Saturday game. And now you're kind of like grasping for straws, trying to figure out how this 12 and 13 personnel is going to work out for you and kind of help you from that standpoint. But I think anytime you can do that, it really gives you a lot of maximizes who you are offensively.
Coach, I know you don't have anything to share as far as any dates or clinics or anything like that. I could tell our listeners that the guys at the University of Akron are very welcoming to the high school coach and to recruits. So if there's something you're interested in doing, you want to get out there. When they get going again, I highly recommend it. Just a great group of guys. And Coach Zagorski, I really appreciate you taking time here for our listeners so they can follow you as well as understand where you recruit. So first of all, what's your recruiting area? What areas do you hit?
I have the best recruiting area in America. I've got Northeast Ohio. So I've got all Summit, Stark, the west side of Cuyahoga County, into Lorain County, and then down into Medina. And then I recruit offensive and defensive players nationwide, but I spend the majority of my time right here in the heart of it all, Northeast Ohio.
Awesome. And your Twitter handle?
Akron Coach Z. So all no spaces in between. AKRON Coach Z. Z is in Zagorski, zebra. Ready to go with that. And, one of the things that's great is, just to let everybody know, what we're doing here, what we're building here, you really got to step foot on our campus. I grew up here in Northeast Ohio and didn't get an opportunity to really attend or to ever go to the University of Akron except to see LeBron play at the Jar a couple times when I was in high school. And I really didn't get a chance to walk onto our campus. And I think even if you've been to Akron, in the last 5 years, it's changed. And it continues to change really for the better for our students. We have some of the best programs in the world. Our pulmonary engineering program is number one in the world. We have one of the best sociology programs in the country. Our psychology program is outstanding. Our nursing program is outstanding. We have the Fisher Institute for Sales, where our students are graduating with a sales business opportunity that not a lot of other students are getting. And it's really a special place. And then you get a chance to meet our coaches and get to meet our, everyone that's involved in the culture that we cultivate every single day. And the University of Akron is a special place. And hopefully we as a nation are ready to do this. We go back out and get a chance to get everybody down to the 3-3-0 and get a chance to see it.
Absolutely. Well, again, Coach, I appreciate your time. And I guess chill and enjoy some time here when the wife is home from her nursing duties. In the meantime, I guess learn some ball.
Absolutely. Read as much as you can. Read something that's in your wheelhouse that you can read right now. I'm finishing a book right now called Gridiron Genius by Mike Lombardi. Which I know a lot of people here have already read it, but it's just good to go back through that. And then my non-football reading right now, I promised myself at the beginning of Lent I was going to read the entire New Testament. So I'm finishing through that, which I've had a little bit more opportunity than I did previously to do it, so there's no excuses. And then wash your hands. And really, the social distancing thing, let's make sure that we're doing the right thing, and let's attack this. Let's be the forefront. Ohio, we've been such a forefront in so many other things when it comes to football, when it comes to education, when it comes to just different things that we've given to our culture as a country. And our governor has been very proactive, and some people say a little overreactive, but I'd rather have us be an overreactive country, overreactive state, and be a great model for everybody else. So let's do this together. Let's pray together. Let's beat this together, and let's go with God and let's fight with heart.
Exactly, and you'll be excited. Michael Lombardi agreed to come back on the podcast. We'll link his previous episode, which is still one of my favorites. We'll link that in our show notes as well. So, Coach Z, take care, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Chief. Take care.
Thanks again for listening to the Coach and Coordinator podcast. Please check out our new website, coachandcoordinator.com, and follow me on Twitter @Coach K. Grabowski.